All right, Brian Davis, welcome to Second Nature. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
This is the first time you and I have met, but your reputation precedes you. Aaron was telling me that at the Outdoor Media Summit, you basically stole the show. All the founders, all the operators were looking to you as the Yoda, the sensei, somebody who is operating at a super high level. We're going to talk about your entire entrepreneurship journey, but it sounds like, the bulk of your time is spent running and managing Hollow Socks. So that'll probably take up the bulk of the conversation. But Lutzi, maybe before we get to Brian, paint the picture of the panel that he was on and the environment in the room while he was talking.
You could have heard a pin drop when Brian was speaking. I don't remember anything else during that panel other than the fact that I was just locked in on every word that he had to say. And probably the moment where everybody took a deep breath during Brian's presentation, he dropped the bomb on everybody with, we spend $1 million a month advertising Hollow Socks. And I think that was just like, okay, all right, this guy's on a whole different level. Please, teach us.
Yeah, Brian, so that was the first thing that Lutzi told me. Oh, there was this guy who on a panel said he spends $1 million a month on advertising. And then when we were talking about breaking onto the podcast, he said, oh, this is the guy who spends $1 million on advertising. So that's a good little cliffhanger for the audience. We'll get around to the ad spend. Brian, quickly, give us just a quick thumbnail sketch of your entrepreneurship journey, how you ended up where you are.
I think the whole thing started really in 8th grade where I decided I absolutely do not want to work for other people. So that was kind of how my life was set up at that point on. And along the way, I worked for other people, which was great. And I encourage everyone to do so you can learn some lessons on somebody else's dime. But then at some point when I moved to Wisconsin, actually, I grew up in St. Louis, lived in Chicago. And then as soon as I got out of Chicago, that entrepreneurial spirit started rolling again because it was just so much less stressful to live up here. Chicago's very stressful and I was very poor. So when I moved up here, there was at least a chance to do something. So then, I established my life, my job, met my wife or married my wife, and then started going down this path. And it actually started with rental real estate. And then part of that, one of the jobs I had, I worked for FedEx and I was a sales rep. So I would just go knock on doors. And one of those doors I knocked on was a guy that sold a ton of stuff on Amazon. And he taught me how Amazon worked. And then I started connecting some dots with other customers of mine that sold bird feeders. And then next thing you know, I'm selling like $30,000 a month worth of bird feeders on Amazon. And I've never fed a bird in my freaking life, right? I have no idea why that's interesting to people. And eventually I figured it out. And I found I just got really pissed off at squirrels and didn't really enjoy the bird part so much. So I stopped feeding anything in my backyard. And then, but that was a key moment because that gave me confidence that we all have little product ideas here and there, but not knowing what to do with it next I didn't know that was my hurdle, but that was my hurdle and pretty much everybody else's. So having that confidence of understanding how Amazon worked at least a little bit gave me the kind of the guts to move forward with one of these ideas that I had. And that first one I launched was called Fix It Sticks, spelled normally, no weirdness, no hyphens, FIXITSTICKS. Launched that on Kickstarter in 2013, sold $45,000 worth of these at the time. Bicycle tools is what I launched. And then did it the next year. I launched a different variation of the product and sold $90,000 worth of them in the second Kickstarter. And then along the way, I was getting calls from all over the world like, hey, I want to be your distributor in Europe or South America or South Africa or whatever else. And I'm over here Googling what is a distributor? Right. So, yeah. So there was a process. And then shortly after the second Kickstarter, I ended up selling the majority of the company to somebody else, which is great. And we'll definitely talk about how that fit into my life and my overall strategy going forward. And then I launched 2 brands that were maybe not so great on Kickstarter, and they were fun. I learned what doesn't work. And then eventually my co-founder and I started Hollow Socks, and now we make alpaca socks, import the fiber from Peru, make the socks in North Carolina, and ship them out all over the country. We don't ship globally yet, but certainly getting plenty of invitations to do so. So this company has just gone off like a rocket ship, and I owe my co-founder an extraordinary amount of credit and gratitude for a lot of that growth. He is world class at doing Facebook ads, which is why we spend so much money on them.
So fun. Lutzi, where do you want to dive in here? There's so many details to really tease out this story.
There's 8 podcasts that could come out of the last 2 minutes alone right there. Okay, let's just back all the way up to Amazon. So that was sort of like the first domino to fall. What are the things that you're learning? I think everybody kind of needs that first win to give them that confidence that they can then sort of continue building on that. But what were the things that you were doing even in the early days of Amazon that were kind of helping you build those signals that like you could actually do this stuff?
Great question. So I think the biggest thing that I learned in that process was one, a little bit like the technical side of Amazon, but it evolves so much it's not totally relevant. But the biggest thing, the breakthrough was you can just pick up the phone and do stuff, right? And I know that's like such trite little piece of advice, but that really is the thing. Like as soon as you get a little confidence in your heart, you just gotta push yourself into some uncomfortable conversations. So like the first one I had was with that bird feeder manufacturer, which they were my customer, right, at FedEx. Like I took them to Packer games, like we knew each other well enough. But when I called Ruth is her name, I called her. She's the co-owner of the company with her husband. And I'm like, hey, I want to sell bird feeders on Amazon. And I'm like stumbling over my words. It's hard to get it out. My mouth was just dry as a desert. And she says, okay. I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to get started? And she says, credit card. Um, okay, so Visa 44, and she's like, yep, got it. Okay. How many do you want? 5? Okay. So I sold 5 bird feeders in the first week. And then the next week I bought 10, and the next week I bought 20, and the next week I bought 40. And then it started to like fall into place. Like I could figure out how Amazon worked. I figured a little bit about cash and money. I still pretty terrible at that side of things. But anyway, that was kind of what got the ball rolling. And then that confidence is like people ask, like, how do you do these things? I'm like, it's just, even if you have to totally fake it to yourself, that little bit of confidence seed to start something that's the tipping point. Once you're comfortable being awkward, it opens up so many doors for you. But so many people are, locked into this is the rules that society, my family, my friends, my wife, whatever is set for me. I'm going to follow it. Even if you can't verbalize that, you're living that. And breaking out of that is takes guts. But once you do, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not always good, but it's pretty good.
You can just do things. So why sell Fix It Sticks when you did? And it sounds like you're still a shareholder in the business, but after the two, it sounds like very successful Kickstarters. A buyer
Yeah,
approached you. Why did that feel like the right thing to do?
I severely wish this was on purpose, but this is definitely rear view mirror strategy. So when Fix It Sticks was going and rolling, like I struggled with, as funny as your intro is, I struggled with spending money on ads just mentally. I just struggle with being kind of a cheap person, I guess, to some extent. I don't think I am, but my friends tell me I am. So in any event, paying for ads was difficult. So I was trying to do everything I could to get Fix It Sticks rolling through PR efforts. So I got to be pretty good at PR and press outreach and being friends with people in the press. And that was critical. But that's like, it's like a dopamine hit. It just, you get a press hit and it's cool for a week and then it's dead. And then you got to go find it. Like you never get off that treadmill if that's your whole basis, right? So, that was a big part of why I decided that it was a good time to sell, is because I wasn't selling as much to make this career as a career work. And I frankly, I didn't know the way out of that box. I didn't know how to navigate that. And I didn't, I did a lot of things right, but I did a lot of things looking back on it, like, oh, I should have invested here. I should have done this. Like a good example, I had a part-time employee. He was a friend of mine, worked out of my house in the little office, or in my same office. But I hired him part-time because I was being cheap, and I should have hired him full-time because then I would have been spending my time on the phone closing sales, which I'm pretty good at, instead of sitting out in the garage, my own garage here where I made the sticks in the first 2 years. I'm sitting out there pounding up sticks, listening to AC/DC, drinking beers with him, which is super fun, but it's not progressing the business really. So yeah, that was a big lesson there. So
Was
that
it
was why I decided to
meaningful?
sell. I don't think I was the right leader to take it.
How long were you working on it before you sold? And was it meaningful? And what does it structurally look like now with you remaining as a shareholder?
Great question, and happy to share that because I think it's really important for people that are approaching that or thinking or want that as the outcome to think through this. So there was the process was he called me out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about selling your company?" I'm like, "Well, it's noon. I've thought about it like 4,000 times today already." So it's just a lot of stress, right? Like I'm up at like I still remember to this day, like very clearly the pain in my jaw when I would wake up in the morning for like months of stress, just
I still have that. I have that all the
grinding.
time, dude. All the
Yeah.
time.
It's
Yeah.
brutal, man. Absolutely brutal. My head would hit the pillow, and it was like every night was fight night with my own brain. So that gets exhausting after a certain amount of time. And knowing I just had this feeling I'm not the right person to take this to the next level. Like it's a cool product. Like people would come up to us at the trade show, or I'd get emails all the time like, dude, I love these things. These are amazing. It was interesting. They didn't ever use the word I like these. It was almost always I love these. People that kind of got into it. Like there's still a guy that carries his Fix It sticks from the original Kickstarter in his pocket that I'm friends with. There's one guy got a tattoo. This is like when you know you made it. He got a tattoo of a set of Fix-It sticks in his pocket because he was a pro mechanic for like a year, and it was always in his pocket, so he tattooed it and sent it into the company. I was like, that was a good moment. So in the end, I figured out, oh, the rearview mirror strategy is this. I am pretty good at getting things from 0 to 1. I am not the person to go from 1 to 10, and I'm definitely not the person to go from 10 to 100.
Wow.
Hmm.
Really interesting.
So knowing when to stop.
Okay, I need to tap into.
I'm sorry. Let me run back to the structure because I think that's really important. So the phone rings. We go through the non-disclosure stuff. He says, "I'll give you an upfront payment that was like, for me at the time was a crap ton of money." So his first offer was reasonable, but I said no, and I was willing to say no, and have him walk away. And I said, just for reference, I feel like if your offer was double what you had said, I would take that and find something else to do with my life. And then I fully expected the phone to hang up. But he said, well, I might be able to put that together. Let me call you back. Okay, well, you do that and let me know. Oh my God. Right, so then he calls back and he says, I want to come up and visit you. And his name's Jimmy and he lives in Chicago. So that's always like, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this, right? So, so he shows up at my house and he's like, a very nice guy. And we hit it off really well. And kind of showed him our operation in my stupid garage, which was not OSHA compliant on any level. So we get through that meeting, and then he says, "All right, I'll offer you double what you'd said." And my body language was still like, I don't know. And so he called me back a day later. He's like, "I got the impression you still weren't ready to pull the trigger. So what if you still owned a portion of the company going forward?" And that was not on the table. It was going to be a lump sum and then royalties for 7 years. And it was the addition of the equity that I needed because this was my baby, and I'm in all the press, Bicycling Magazine, all these people talking about me. I'm like, this is my thing. So to give up that thing was emotionally extremely difficult. Like when you watch Shark Tank and you're screaming at the TV, sell, sell, sell. That's the same hurdle I was hitting. It's just like, I can't. Yeah. And then when he offered the equity, I was like, he didn't even finish the sentence. I'm like, I'm in. This is perfect. And it's worked out so well. Jimmy has been an amazing operator. Saw him this week we were at SHOT Show in Vegas. Both my brands were at the same show, which was really cool. And he's just grown the company like crazy. And we, like I asked him, I'm like, how's the show for you? He's like, oh, it's like a week of high fives. People come by and just like, I love your product. I love your product. I love your product. Like, that's awesome. So yeah. That was
one final thing before Lutzi take it. How long were you working on it before the transaction settled?
Just 2 years. It was pretty quick for that one.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Wow. So, part of what you're doing now, you're also a professor of entrepreneurship. And so the question I want to ask in this first phase of your journey, what was the skill that you developed along the way that was maybe like the highest leverage? It sounds like the bird feeder thing, you weren't even thinking about brand. You weren't thinking about production. You were just focused on sales, from what I can understand. Is that the highest leverage thing to learn, and everything else is sort of secondary? Like, what do you think was sort of like your secret weapon from, really starting from selling stuff on Amazon to having your first exit?
So I had a background in sales, professional sales, like FedEx, DHL, sold advertising in the past, things like that. And this axiom, which is pretty, very widely known, but sales fixes everything. So whatever problems are happening in your business, if you just go sell more, it will fix everything. So for me, it was always like, and I came from that background, right? So that was always kind of my laser focus, is like, it doesn't matter how cool the widget is, doesn't matter how well it works. If nobody knows about it or wants to buy it, what's the point? So people call me an inventor here and there. I'm slightly uncomfortable with that word, but it's okay. I do have a patent on Fix-It sticks. I do not have a patent on alpaca socks. That's okay. So, but I'm always an entrepreneur first. So the business part is way more interesting to me than the product part. I love the product part. It's a close second, but the business we have to sell stuff or go get a regular job. A regular job is way easier.
Brian, I'm interested in hearing you talk more about not feeling like you're the right person to take things beyond 0 to 1 and whether or not that's a teachable skill. And with Hollow Socks, it feels like, you're well past 0 to 1 at this point. How have you grown into maybe developing that skill?
It is a tough skill to figure out. And almost all of it is checking your ego, which I have an enormous ego. If you ask my wife, like she will tell you, right? So that part is difficult for me to park that. But like watching Fix It Sticks grow so much under someone else's vision, it gets real clear real quick that I'm not the right guy for the party. And then, so like the moment, but obviously didn't know that when I sold it. So the moment when I was like, okay, I'm going to sell it, it was this amount of money that I was going to get as the lump was enough to kind of like dig out of a number of problems. Like I started with rental properties, right? So I still own those rental properties. And this was 2015 when I sold most of Fix It Sticks, which is not a great time to own a bunch of houses. Right. So it wasn't until the last 5 or 6 years that started to look like a great decision. But I really wanted to keep the houses and using that money to help with the housing side of my life was pretty critical at that point. So I wouldn't say I was forced into the decision, but it became clearer because I needed the money to do something else. I don't know if that helps. That's not so teachable. And since then, after watching it unfold, I'm like, oh, this is where I belong. And I really did we'll talk about Hollow, but I essentially crafted Hollow to go down that exact same path. And again, it's worked out really, really well to get myself out of the way.
Okay, great. We'll come back to that.
I want to talk a little bit about the things that happened after Fix It Sticks, because you'd mentioned previously there were a couple failures along the way as well. So, in the timeline now, you've had this successful exit, you're a successful founder, everything else should be, 10 for 10, just absolutely crushing it, right? What happens next?
So after Fix It Sticks, I got a little Steve Jobs disease, except he's really good at it and I am not. So I was like, oh, I have this idea for this bottle that'll go in your jersey pocket so you can carry it on a long bike ride. You'd still use your standard 2 bottles, but if you want to do cyclocross where there's no cages, or if you want to do long bike rides, 3-4 hours, you have an extra bottle that's not a whole backpack and all this stuff. So that was kind of the idea. 3D print, before I even sold Fix It Sticks, I had 3D printed a bunch and prototyped a bunch and put weights in it to try to mimic the weight of water and things like that, and testing and testing and testing. And I thought it was a cool product. I mean, it solved a need for me. But the business lesson is I was solving a very small problem for a very small amount of people. And that is not where you want to be. You either want to be solving a really big problem for a small amount of people, or solving a really small problem for a large amount of people. So over here is like how to fix a toilet paper making machine. And over here is selling toilet paper, right? So if my toilet paper making, I live in the Fox Cities, which is all paper, right? So if the toilet paper making machine goes down, I'm going to pay one guy an enormous amount of money to get that thing back online. Otherwise, I'm selling toilet paper for a very thin margin to literally everyone on earth. So the closer you are to the middle of that, the worse off you are.
So interesting.
You want to be in these extremes. And I didn't hear that quote or that talk track till like 6 years later, because I thought I would have stopped the bottle thing. Because again, the bottle solves a really small problem for a really small amount of people. Like, it's not even on the Venn diagram. It's just such a terrible idea. So a very small total addressable market, a very niche product, a very low price point. It's just set. I mean, looking back on it, it was set up for disaster. But
I'm already evaluating my businesses through that lens right now in my head as we're talking. I can tell you teach entrepreneurship here, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
The professor is in.
I'm glad it's having an effect. I'm glad my hard-earned lessons of losing tons of money is helping in someone else. I love to pay that forward. So I have a garage full of back bottles that I still sell, but they're out there, and every time I pass them, it reminds me like, oh, man, that was dumb.
Well, keep going on some of the lessons from the failure, and maybe even just bring us into the practical day-to-day, how you were managing it, and at what point you came to the conclusion that this really isn't working.
So I for back bottle at least I should use failure loosely because I got a little bit lucky in the beginning. I sold a bunch of them to this guy in the Philippines that wanted to just buy like a ton. So that paid for the mold and paid for basically the whole effort. So it's fairly broken even at that point just from that one order. I bet he still has a garage in the Philippines that he's looking at too, but here we are. So, I think the big thing that the Steve Jobs part was I was like, oh, I was getting feedback. I was asking people what they thought about the product. By the way, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick little lesson on how to get feedback for people out there that are thinking about launching their idea. The best way I found to get feedback is totally free, but the way it works is a little convoluted to explain, but the way it works is like, here's you with your idea. Here's someone else in the world that loves your product or should love your product and service. They're in your target market. And then there's somebody in the middle here. So you go to your Facebook, social media of choice, whatever, and you say, hey, world, do you know anybody that's in this target market that I do not know? If so, don't contact them, but let me know. And you'll get 10 or 15 messages like, oh, I know this crazy mountain biker. I know this skier. I know this yoga person, whatever your thing is, right? And you say, I'm going to send you a product. And even if that description is just a paragraph is enough to prototype for feedback about what you're going to build. And then have that person in the middle send it to the person over here. The person in the middle says, this is not my idea. I'm not investing. So be very, very blunt and honest. That feedback goes back to the middle person sends it to you. And that removes all the emotion from getting that product feedback. And that's really critical. So I always tell people like start with 10 pieces of feedback like that and see what the world is telling you. And if it's going well, then try to get to 100 pieces of feedback and see if you can confirm that attitude is the same and then launch. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on getting that feedback. So the back bottle was getting negative feedback, but that's where the Steve Jobs part, I'm like, well, they'll like it when I tell them because when I make it, they'll like it. They're just not understanding what I'm saying. Nope. They were right. It was a dumb idea. So wow. Yeah, that was the lesson is to do all that stuff, but I didn't listen to it. And that was the part that I figured out since then. And then after that, I launched another product that was like a balaclava. I love the product, but it's called the Weatherneck. So balaclava is like this for winter, right? But I race fat bikes in the winter. And all you want to do when you get hot is take that face mask off. But when you're wearing a helmet or skiing would be the same thing. You can't really get the buff off or the face mask off without wrestling it over your stuff. Well, that's not going to work in a bike race. So I made mine with magnets. So in the back of the hat were steel washers and in the face mask were magnets. So you could snap it. And then when you're done with it, you could rip it off, throw it in your pocket and keep on trucking. It worked great, but it was all black and very hard to photograph and just weird looking. So that didn't work out.
The Weatherneck seems like you're solving a very probably a big problem for a microscopic amount of people.
Yes, microscopic.
Fat bikers in Wisconsin.
That's right. Same problem. You hit the nail on the head.
You're putting like 10 for 10 effort into a 1 of 10 opportunity instead of, right?
So well said. So well said. Yeah. There's zero difference in the amount of work to launch these things. So you may as well shoot where something that there's a big market.
Wow, so interesting.
Why wouldn't you? Because you had equity, you had a relationship with Fix It Sticks, and from what it looks like, Fix It Sticks has continued to expand into a lot of other categories. Why would you, if you had that relationship and you had that stuff, why wouldn't you just have put these products into the Fix It Sticks sort of universe instead of trying to put them out on the way that you did?
Yeah, fair point, and I certainly thought about it at the time. But it was such a departure from a tool that it seemed even weird for me. And at the time, like I had thoughts and feelings about brands. Since then, I've abandoned thinking about your brand till you're over 10 or 15 million in sales. Like, don't even think about your brand. Just react to what people are. Yeah, people spend so much time worrying about their brand, and like, unless you're doing 10 million plus, it's not the time to worry about your brand. No one knows who you are. If you go down the street and ask 100 people if they've heard of your brand and you feel pretty sure that answer is going to be 0 out of 100, you don't have a brand, move on with your life. And when I say move on with your life, like focus on the product, don't worry so much about the brand and be willing to pivot. Like that's really what happened with Fix It Sticks. If I had kept it, that's the other problem with me keeping it. I'm not a shooter or hunter. So I can't speak that language. I'm not authentic to that audience. I am with cycling. So I would have kept it as a cycling tool forever, and we would have sold like $150,000 a month or a year and been like, oh, I guess that's as big as this company's ever going to be. But by allowing the brand to be flexible enough to transition into another space, turns out shooting and hunting people spend money like drunken sailors, and endurance people are pretty tight. so, so we're much better off in shooting and hunting.
It reminds me of stuff we talk about on the podcast, and that is being the value of being a practitioner. And it sounds like a lot of the products were born out of just a love of cycling in your case. Yeah.
100%. All four of them.
More of a hunting and shooting dominant customer. It was born out of the cycling community.
Yeah. I think the one thing in common is, at least with Fix-It Sticks, is like a small portable tool set is not uncommon in cycling, of course. But they look cool, right? So if you look up our website, you'd be like, oh, those look kind of badass. I mean, now they look badass. But back when I was doing it, they just looked like a little bike tool, right? Like every other multi-tool. But now it's like got a certain vibe to it that appeals to that tactical buyer. And we have contracts with Navy SEALs and contracts with the U.S. Army for their sniper program. And like, I mean, it's legit used in these places. Like we get... Fun fact, Navy SEAL units get their own credit card, so they can charge up to $5,000 per quarter or per month or whatever it is. So like every once in a while at the end of a month or end of a quarter, whatever it is, you'll see these orders for like $4,995 going to like Fort Bragg or something. You're like, I got you, buddy. That's great.
All right, let's spend the rest of our time talking about HoloSocks. I think maybe the best place to start is introduce us to the co-founder, who you mentioned is a savage himself. I already sent Lucy a text message. Dude, this Brian Davis guy is incredible as we're recording this. So
all caps.
If you're saying your co-founder is a legend, he must be a legend. Tell us about
he is the boss for sure.
Compliment each other.
Yeah, his name is Zach Stuck. If you want to follow him on Twitter, he does drop some really solid nuggets for ecom over there. So his Twitter handle is X handle is at Zach, Z-A-C-H, M as in Mary, Stuck, S-T-U-C-K. So Zach M Stuck or Twitter, whatever it is. So he has a podcast as well. So he was so fun little. I love this story, so I just got to make you bear with me real quick. I first met, so at the time after I launched Fix-It Sticks, I was like the only person in a 200-mile radius that had done a Kickstarter, right? So then Zach reaches out to me when he's 19 years old and says, hey, can I take you out for coffee and pick your brain on how Kickstarter works? And at that time, I was probably getting a pick your brain request every week or every other week. And I did them almost all just because I like to give back and learn from people. But I have this little test, and the little test is if you buy my coffee, I will sit as long. You can ask whatever question you want. I'm an open book. But if I show up at that coffee meeting and you have not figured out a way to buy my coffee, and I'm always a little bit early, we're done. You weren't raised right. It's not going to end well for you. It's not going to work out. So always buy the other person's coffee, whatever you got to do, pay in advance, drop a credit card, open a tab. I don't care what it takes. Buy the other person's coffee. So Zach bought my coffee, and he brought me a couple little treats from the brand he was going to start at the same time. It was like a t-shirt brand, so he brought me one. So we meet, we have a good meeting, and then fast forward a few years, I had to go back and take a day job, so that Fix-It Sticks was still growing, but it wasn't pouring out cash, right? So I'm like, I should probably go get a job again. So I went back and worked for a digital marketing company because I wanted to learn how stupid Facebook worked. So that was my plan, is to watch other people spend their money, and I would learn. So at that job, I met Zach again. And he's like, oh, you don't remember me, do you? I'm like, no. He's like, I asked you to pick your brain. I was like, oh, was I nice? And he said, yeah, you were great. I'm like, oh, that means you bought my coffee. So good. So then we worked together for 2 years. And then this is the part where it gets kind of fun. I introduced Zach to the Fix-It Sticks owner at the time. And then that relationship allowed Zach to go start his own digital marketing agency because Fix-It Sticks was his first client. And to Zach's credit, he is an absolute savage. He took that opportunity and ran with it. So his advertising agency side of his life is now 85 people that work for that. So he extracted himself as CEO. Well, he didn't know that then, right? So we were still working together at the time. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do this sock thing. It's alpaca socks. I don't know if you want to get involved, but I know because I learned from Fix-It Sticks, like I need someone that's really good at selling stuff and is good at Facebook. And here he is right in front of me. Like, do you want to be my co-founder? Yeah. That sounds good. And I'll never forget this. We're in the parking lot of that place, and he says, I'm really good at selling stuff. And I said, I'm pretty good at making stuff up. So I think this is going to work out. So it did. We launched our Kickstarter. We sold like $40,000 worth of socks. Back then it was called Follow Hollow. That was my name for it. And then this is kind of interesting. This is a moment where the Fix It Sticks lesson came back and really helped me out in my life, getting yourself out of the way. So we got through 2 years. It was like 2019 is when we launched on that Kickstarter. So we get through the pandemic, or we're starting right in 2020. So we get through the pandemic, which is actually a really good time to be selling comfortable socks. So not so bad. But I kind of reached the limit of what I can do with things. And funny enough, it was like the same revenue limit of Facebook at the time, or of Fix It Sticks at the time, like 250,000 is where I cap out, I guess. So he's like, I think this brand has legs. I want to run with it. I'm like, go get them. But I don't have the confidence to just give you a credit card to go crazy with. So I'll fast forward some of the conversation, but essentially I was like, what if you just took over the company? So we switch equity position. That was it. So at the time we had a $50,000 worth of debt, which was healthy inventory debt, no big deal. But I was like, I'll pay that myself, which was not an easy task, but I was willing to do that, to invest in Zach. You take the company. I still own a portion of it. You don't have to check in with me. You can do whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. Just feel confident, right? So he does that, takes over, changes the name to Hollow. And I had consternation about that at the time, but it worked out great. Good idea. I was going down a path of doing like stripes and designs and patterns. And he's like, nope, black and gray. I had consternation about that at the time. Nope, that was the right decision. So like his ability to just have a vision and stick with it is amazing. He wrote on a whiteboard. We got our first employee, Mary, who's still with us, who's an amazing human. She's amazing. So he writes down for Mary. She was very young when she was hired, as was Zach. We're going to sell this many in 22, this many in 23, this many in 24, and this many in 25. And that son of a bitch nailed those numbers like to the dollar. I mean, it's crazy. So that was his last future telling was 2025, and he hit it. So last 2025 we had 47 million in sales, and he had on that whiteboard, I think he said 45, which, you know, rounding error for 2 million of sales.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Okay, I want to circle back to the conversation, or to the comment you made a little bit earlier in the podcast. You basically said brand doesn't matter, and I would be really curious, like, when did you realize that? Because you launched Hollow, and you just said, you know, hey, I was locked in on this like follow Hollow thing, and I didn't want to let go of it. Were you thinking brand mattered when you launched Hollow? And when did you let go of that? And I just want to hear you talk more about this idea of like, don't worry about brand until you hit 10 to 15 million in sales.
Yeah. And so this is definitely Zach's lesson that I have learned. He shook that out of me. And it was hard because I was like, no, it matters. We have to do, like, I want to handwrite every single thank you for every order, which we did for an extraordinarily long time. Which is cool. I mean, it's a neat thing of being a small brand. Like, I was processing orders in my dining room with my daughter when she was 7 years old, and I got photos of her stuff in envelopes, and I'm writing out thank yous to people. And that's the 0 to 1 part, right? That's where it does. I mean, that part matters. But then when you get to, like, if we had tried to hang on to that and made that like part of our brand, that we're writing handwritten notes to people, or that we're, you know, part of our brand is doing it out of the garage or something like that, like, you can't scale up with those kind of limiters in your own head. So that's where Zach kind of twisted my thinking into, his estimate is 20 million. So, I mean, plus or minus, right? But once you hit over 20 million, there's enough people that have heard of you. You're doing enough Facebook ads where you're a thing. But below that, don't do that. And here's the big lesson from that is, like, when we started Follow Hollow, guess what? It was a cycling brand, because I was like, I want to have socks I can wear in winter, and they're great for gravel and cyclocross. And in summer, I'm still going to wear my roadie socks and blah, blah, blah. But I want something for the other 3 seasons living in Wisconsin. So, Follow Hollow was really trying to solve my own problem of like working all day and then getting on my bike. And when I would get home, I would take off my socks, and that would be the moment I'd lose all my motivation to work out. So this is the origin story, really. And so I thought, well, if I wear cycling socks to work, I can jump right into my bike workout, right? Cycling socks, when you wear them to work, are absolutely freaking awful because they're just made of oil. I mean, they're plastic and oil, right? So terrible after like 3 hours. They're so uncomfortable. So then I started wearing wool socks and experimenting with all these different types of socks. And I found alpaca, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is a home run. It's amazing. But no one had like professionalized alpaca really. So that was kind of my insight as to pitching it to Zach, is like, I think we can be the first company to really professionalize alpaca socks, just like merino wool is. And so that was kind of the path to to get started on. Now I'm getting older, Aaron, and I lost your question as I was talking.
I just wanted to hear. I wanted to hear you talk more about, focusing in on things other than brand. And I think related to this is really the question of, did you guys just launch right away into the Facebook ads, and was that sort of the lever that really helped build this to follow on Kickstarter? Like you said earlier, sales fixes everything. So did you just like, all right, we're just going to focus on this thing. We're going to start launching ads right away. We're going to get our consumer acquisition costs as low as possible, and we're just going to crank the lever.
100%. That was Zach's vision for it. I mean, again, the early response from the Kickstarter is people didn't like them. They loved them. Like there was no like, these are okay. It was love. And so once you get a product that has that level of passion, I mean, you just got to tell more people about it, right? So if you can sell 500 pairs of socks to 500 strangers on the internet, why can't you add a 0 to that and make it 5,000 people? And once you're at 5,000, why can't you do 50,000? Once you're at 50, why can't you do 500,000? So that's Facebook, understanding the math of Facebook. Like it's easy to understand the math on the surface level. It's hard to live the math. And so what I mean by that is like, it's hard to watch that credit card get rung up. I mean, in our case, we'll do $200,000 in a weekend of Facebook ads. Certainly around Q4, maybe a little bit less in certain times of year, but for sure Q4, we're blowing through cash on Facebook ads. So getting comfortable with that and understanding your cash flow is interesting. And like that, so in terms of the brand thing, sorry to jump back to that real quick, because I started that cycling thing, right? And then Zach he's not encumbered by being a cyclist. He's an active guy, he does lots of stuff, but he's not like passionate about cycling. And same with the Fix It Sticks guy, he's not passionate about cycling. So you can open your scope a little bit. And that's where the brand conversation really comes in, is like, I'm so in this world of cycling that I can't see past it. And these two operators that I work with at these two brands can clearly see past it, that there's a bigger future. So the big thing Zach did is when we started selling a pretty decent amount with Facebook ads, like you're saying, right from the jump, he started doing a lot of post-purchase surveys to ask people, why are you buying these socks? What activities are you doing? What are you up to? What are your plans with this? Why did you come to our site and buy 6 pairs of socks for $140? Like, that's not normal behavior at the time. And then a lot of those responses were like, oh, I go elk hunting once a year. I go quail hunting, or I go pheasant hunting in North Dakota. It's really cold, or whatever. Like the hunting thing was like here, and every other activity was down here. Like, okay, I think we're more of a hunting brand now. So we made some big shifts.
You started 2 cycling brands that transform into hunting brands.
And I can't wait to think of the next hunting thing, because I mean, these guys, they love spending money, and they're a passionate crew, right? Like I mean, it's very similar to cycling too. Like when you find that product that just opens doors for you, or you love, you will tell everyone about it. And that it's the same in that community as well.
Well, I have to admit, Brian, while you were answering that question, I also just bought 6 pairs of socks from your website.
Nice.
For only $120. I got the discount here with the bundle. But
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Dylan. Now you're one of my customers. We are friends for life. I appreciate that.
Sir. Awesome.
That was like the equivalent of buying him a coffee for all the information.
Right. Yeah, that's a big coffee. I appreciate that, brother.
This is already a top 5 episode ever for me. And yes, I will request a buy you coffee and pick your brain at some point in the future, Brian. I'm going to hold you to it now that I'm a paying customer. All right, coming back to Zach here. I'm literally on his X account right now. I also followed him while we're recording this.
Nice.
He posted last week, big news. I'm beyond stoked to announce Joshua Haskins as Hollow's new GM. He's smarter, kinder, and 10 times more jacked than me. This guy's about to sell alpaca socks to sheep. Hollow's knocking on Big Apparel's door in 2026. Expect to see some major things coming from this team. I think that opens up a bunch of different questions here. Tell us about Josh, like how he fits in to the team. And also, like knocking on Big Apparel's door. It feels like the vision is big for this brand.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So we're very excited about Josh. And for the same reason that I was will forever be very excited about Zach. Like I said, I'm the 0 to 1 guy. Zach is very much a 1 to 10 guy. But now going from 10 to 100, we're hoping that's Josh, right? So, but I think it's an interesting ego check for Zach as well. Just like I had to ego check myself out of the door, he's eventually going to ego check himself out of day-to-day operations within the company. And that's the vision for Josh. So he's the GM now, but our hopes are that he will become the CEO after he gets some time under his belt. So I just met him last week at the trade show we were at, and I ran into Zach yesterday. He's like, "What'd you think of Josh?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, he is 10 out of 10 hire. He is absolutely what we need." And so my description of Josh to Zach was, he's very calm, calculating, but there's a layer of savage under there that is unmistakable. Like a very nice guy, but there's that layer of like, oh, he's serious, which is exactly what we need.
So you guys are,
So we're very excited for Josh.
You guys are based in Wisconsin, though. I wonder, how does that work for recruiting, or are you guys trying to sort of spread out beyond and just make it like a remote type thing? Like, how do you think about sort of everybody being in one place, or accessing talent from places other than potentially the Midwest?
Lovely question. We are very remote. So Zach figured out all the remote stuff with his agency. So of those 85 people that work for him, a fair amount are overseas even. The bulk of them, I think there's 60 U.S. employees full-time, and then some overseas contractors and full-time overseas as well. So he's very comfortable operating in that environment. So for Josh's example, actually, he just moved out of Portland. He was running a program for Nike Strength, like their dumbbells that was a subset of Nike. So he ran that program, and then he came to us because he wants to move back to Florida to be near family. So he's going to live in Tampa. We're based in Wisconsin. Totally fine. We have a number of people in Chicago. Zach is here in Wisconsin with me. We have Mary is here in Wisconsin. So our core founding three are here in Wisconsin, and then we have somebody in California. We have some virtual assistants overseas. And so, yeah, that we recruited nationwide, and they can live wherever they want, and it's no problem on our end. And we make the socks in North Carolina, we import it from Peru, make them in North Carolina, and we ship out of Missouri, and our headquarters is in Wisconsin. So there's a lot going on.
Real quick, expand on the plans for the future, because the tweet here, the post from Zach, insinuates that you're going to expand out of socks.
Someday. That is probably true. We have determined that other competitors in this space that we've all heard of are probably 220 million. And like I said, this year we're 47 million. We're shooting to be 75 next year. So there's still plenty of room to grow on socks. And people know us for socks. They like us for socks. They associate us with socks. We're not in a fired up rush to get into base layers or any of that other stuff, because we've seen plenty of other brands skew growth, and the cash it takes to do that is extraordinary. So for Zach and I are the only owners of Holla. There's no investors, no cap table. It's just us currently. That might change shortly, but at the moment it's just us. So to grow from nothing to 47 million bootstrapped is pretty freaking amazing. And then where we go from here is going to be dependent on largely how much alpaca we can get our hands on, because that's not an unlimited amount of material. And then there's some things we can do to sort of spread that out a little bit more. We could do a lower blend. We could do a different style of sock. There's different types of alpaca we could buy. We could blend with merino, blah, blah, blah. So there's some things we can do to get up to 220 without necessarily crushing the total amount of alpaca. But then hopefully we reach a tipping point where we're a bit more of a lifestyle brand, and then we can get permission from our customers to do more interesting things outside of socks. I think at the moment we do not have that permission from our customer to go outside of that. They ask all the time, will you do underwear? And I have a pair of prototype underwears on my floor that I wore when I was in Vegas, and they're pretty good already. But are people going to give us permission to do that? I don't know.
I give you permission personally.
Thank you. Well, you're a customer now, so that does count.
So if you were to take investment in the future, what would the purpose of that investment be? Because as I think about it, and with the education that I have on the subject, it would either be to fund new growth or to take chips off the table yourself, right?
Yeah, strictly to fund new growth. So Zach has his life coming from his agency and some other investments and businesses. He runs other businesses, which are also mind blowing as well. But those he doesn't talk about publicly, so I'll leave that to him. But in my business, I still own all those houses. I converted them all to Airbnb. So that's kind of my grocery money. Fix It Sticks pays off a little bit of money now, so I'm okay. But I'm not looking for Hollow to pay my mortgage or anything. Like it can just keep growing and growing and growing. It's not an emergency to get money out, which is super helpful, obviously. And it's a lucky, I wouldn't say lucky, it's a good position to be in. Um, but yeah, I think the vision for the brand is if we hit next year, or for the money, if we were to bring in money, it would be to fund growth, which would be retail expansion. So currently we're in all the Shield stores, and we had a banger year with them as our first full year. It was amazing. They've been an incredible partner for us to learn so much about retail. And I think we've been a good partner for them to learn about how D2C operators can work with retail better. And I'm super stoked at some pricing innovation things that Zach has come up with. And we're working with them on how we can both win at the same time without it having to be like we're fighting each other. We can both benefit from all those ads we're running, drives traffic into Shields for trial. But when people want to go deep and they want to buy 6, 8, 10, 12 pairs, like come to our site. But if you want to buy 1 or 2 pairs, go to Shields. We have some really, we're getting a PO this week from Bass Pro Shops, which maybe I shouldn't talk about, but anyway, let's say this. I'm hoping to get a PO from Bass Pro Shops sometime in the near future. We'll see. Knock on wood. But that one would be, potentially expensive if we pass their test and if we're able to get into more stores. That it's just a lot of money to throw out. And the other issue is with making alpaca socks and really caring about making them correctly, and ourselves. Like, this is my design. It's our weave. Our everything is handcrafted, so to speak. It's not like we went to Alibaba and ordered socks. Like, these are very purposefully built socks. And they're very expensive. So in order to get all that fabric or yarn from Peru, we have to order 6-8 weeks in advance, get the yarn, send it to our manufacturer in North Carolina. That's another 6 weeks to turn it into a sock. So the cash window to be broke is long. And that's where that money, like, I hate to use investment, and everyone should hate to use investment money for inventory. But part of this is like, I feel like we just need to get over the gear and get enough inventory where we're not stocked out. So we had a stock out problem in Q4 this year, and we lost millions of dollars in revenue because we didn't have enough inventory to do it. And we pissed off a lot of customers, but we're fighting out of it, and we're making friends with people again. And I think we'll be okay. But it was, if somebody ordered from us like around early December and they're listening to this podcast, I'm sorry. We are going to do better.
Well, this brings up a really interesting question about, you obviously started this as D2C. You saw the calculus of, hey, we can run ads, we can get people to order off the site based off those ads, and we can run this game as long as we need to, as long as we're keeping all of our costs in check. Then you decided that you wanted to have, specialty retail come into the picture. But like, obviously that introduces a whole slew of all the stuff that you just outlined in terms of cost, inventory, all these, timelines and stuff like that. Why would you go retail? Why did you add that complexity to a business model that's clearly working really well?
I love this question. So things have changed so much in the last couple of years. So if so many brands were retail first and then D2C second. And now I think we're all like, I don't know if you got, well, I know you don't have a Shields by you, but if you get an opportunity to go to a Shields in your travels, highly encourage you to do that. Walk through, you will see so many D2C brands that are native D2C that are in the same boat we are, transitioning. And Shields seems to be especially well equipped to work with companies like us and help us, and we can help them. And it works out to be pretty symbiotic. But by growing I think we're a very fragile business if we're totally reliant on Facebook, right? So Facebook goes away. They have literally an outage for a day of Facebook would mess up a lot of our projections one day. So for us, we have to spread that base out. We need a wider foundation. And that's really where brand starts to come in, is if we can get into the retail space, then brand starts to catch. And then people see the socks in retail. They see an ad on Facebook. They see an ad on Instagram. They hear about us on a podcast. Like, that's where that groundswell starts to develop. And so then you're an overnight success, that took 5 years. It's a long night, but I think that's the path we're headed. Is we want retail to be that wide base of awareness, and then use D2C to do a push pull, right? Like, I want to drive traffic into Shield stores so that we can move through inventory quickly, which we definitely did in Q4. And I want to do that with other retailers that we pick up, and mom and pop retailers. I adore a mom and pop retailer. I'd love them to go to hollowsocks.com and figure out how to do business with us, because to me, that's the part I want to be really passionate about, is getting those smaller accounts serviced correctly. And then the big accounts will be the big accounts, but the small accounts is, I think, where we're really going to make real money.
Pros and cons of manufacturing in the USA and North Carolina in your case.
Ooh. Oh, you got a minute?
Yes.
Okay. Oh man. So Fix It Sticks, when I started that one, it was US. I made everything in my hometown. So machine shop. I had an arbor press going in my garage, making them myself. I ran them up to Green Bay, a half hour away from my house, to get them anodized. Like, the whole thing was me running around town. And then when I sold to Jimmy, he quickly tried to go to China, and I was like, I don't think that's going to work out too good. And it did not. So now we're in Taiwan, and they are world class. They're amazing. The tools are amazing. So, but that process, like, the only reason I was at US, it wasn't like a like a patriotic thing. It wasn't any of that. It was, I needed low order minimums. I needed to be able to drive across town and fix problems like instantly. I couldn't wait 6 weeks for samples back and forth. Like, I just needed to go quick. So that was my philosophy on making in the US. And then I sort of applied the same philosophy to the other products. So Back Bottle was made in the US. Weatherneck was made in the US. Hollow is currently made in the US. And that process it just allows us to be more hands-on, have lower order minimums. But there's downsides to US manufacturing too. Is like, overseas manufacturing is set up to be plug and play. You order a case pack of Fix It Sticks or a case pack of socks, and they come packaged and boxed, and you don't have to worry about the details. You just get socks. Well, in our case, that's not true. We have to source packaging. We have to source somebody to package them. We have to source a sock manufacturer, multiple of them, because we're running out of capacity, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a more fragmented process of a cultural issue into manufacturing in the US. The other weird thing is, like, I have found that people love to say they care about made in the USA. They struggle to pay for made in the USA. So especially with Fix It Sticks, I'd get all these keyboard warriors in the beginning and they'd be like, where are you making these? I'm putting their inflection in their voice, but I'm quite sure I'm accurate. Where are you making these socks or these tools? And I'd say, right here in Wisconsin. Cool. And then I'd go look in the Shopify and see if I could find their name. Nope. No order. So, cool question, bro. But unless you're going to pull the trigger and make an order after asking somebody that, and you get the answer you're looking for, or else you're just looking for a fight. Ugh. So anyway, my attitude toward that is, the consumer, they say they care, they don't really care. So whatever's right for your business is the right decision.
We just talked about this in relationship to sustainability too, right? Like, if you survey consumers, they say, I care a lot about sustainability. And then
100%. I did. I worked at a startup accelerator. I'd get all these pitches coming to me, and they'd say, we're sustainable, we're this, we're that. I'm like, who cares? Like, do you make a better product or not? Because nobody cares about sustainability unless it's a better product or service. People don't buy products or services. They buy better versions of themselves. Now, sustainability could be a part of that, but that's going to be low on the list, right? Like, the car has to look cool. The clothes have to fit right. The tools have to not break. The socks have to be comfortable and warm. Like, those are at the top of the list. Sustainability or green or whatever else, like, cool, go for it. But that's not the lead. That's not the headline. That's the byline.
Why is North Carolina a hub of manufacturing? Because I've followed Origin Apparel for a long time, and that is like the core of their brand is made in the USA, soup to nuts, all the materials sourced in the US, all the manufacturing in the US. And I believe they own or do most of their manufacturing in North Carolina too. Is that something that has a lot of history?
I think most of their work is actually in Vermont, but same concept, right? So we had talks with them early on about supplying them socks, and their issue was because we're pulling the alpaca from Peru, and they're like, well, can you find US alpaca? And we're like, no, so Peru has 4 million animals and the United States has like 250,000. So it's like, no, not even close. Anyway, Origin's a really cool company. And I'm glad you referenced them, because if you're going to go made in the USA, like, go all in like they did. And then I feel like it resonates with the consumer. In our case, like, we just can't get that material in the United States. So we're made in the USA. Interesting side note here is, there's some variations on how to say that properly without getting yourself in trouble. So technically, we're knit in the USA with imported materials. So there, now I'm not in trouble. But if you ask anybody walking down the street, like, hey man, we make these socks in North Carolina, how would you classify that? Every single person you talk to would be like, oh, that's cool, you're making it in the USA. I'm like, I appreciate you. You should go work for the FTC.
This is a Hall of Fame level episode for me, Lutzy.
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore.
See, I told you at OMS, everybody was just like, yeah, you could have heard a pin drop, and now you understand why.
Yeah.
Did we properly cover the fact that Brian spends $1 million a month in advertising?
Maybe we could just quickly just dive into how this whole thing works. So I think we've sort of referenced it, like
broad strokes of the playbook would be fun to kind of wind down to a close here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just looked up before we started how many ads we're running. So today, by the way, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you can look up any company on Facebook. You can see what ads they're running. If you look up page transparency on Facebook, it'll show you how many they're running and it'll show you what they're running. It doesn't necessarily show you how much they're spending behind each one, but it's a really good starting point. So if you're out there listening to this, you're like, I want to start a brand. Don't do socks, thanks. But if you want to do something else, cool. Go find your competitor that's 10 steps ahead of you. Go look at their ad library on Facebook. You'll Google page transparency. It's quite convoluted to get to it on Facebook, but you'll get there, and you can see what they're running. So I did that this morning on our page, and then what I think our competitor is, who's also made in Vermont, so you can do the math there. They're running 31 ads currently. We are running 431 ads. This is how we win. Is the creative iteration that we speed through is light years ahead of other folks. And so what I referenced in the OMS speech was how we build this machine that produces so much creative. And a big part of it is we'll use a little bit of AI in the beginning to do test feelers to see get interesting hooks that we can't think of on our own brains, because there's only so many ways that you can think of to talk about socks. But AI is much more creative, I think, in figuring out like hooks and angles. And then we clean that up with a little bit of human interaction in between. But then of that 431, there's probably 250 of those are AI generated. And then we're looking for signal. So for example, we might run compression socks have been huge for us lately. So we might run something on compression socks and talking about how, if you're doing an overseas flight, these are the right socks for you because you can wear them all day and it provides just the blah, 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 blah. So the travel angle would be the hook, right? So we might run 40 different angles on travel. We might run 40 different angles on sport recovery. We might run 40 different angles on just getting older and wanting to wear compression socks. Cool. And then one or two of those will start to show signs of life. And then that's where we start dumping in real money. And then we'll find like what was the particular part of that hook that resonated. And then we'll start putting human capital behind that. So then our uber talented designers and creators and copywriters that we hire full time that work for us will dive deep into those. And then so that's like the top 10% of our spend are things that we've found are resonating, and then we can put real money behind it. It's interesting to like hear the D2C people talk is like when they find an ad that they are happy with, the metric they use to discuss their happiness is how much money they can put into it. So for them, it's, we were able to spend $10,000 yesterday on that ad. Like, that's awesome. And my cheap brain hears that and I'm like, that sounds like a lot of money, right? Because I still struggle with it, but anyway, That's how it works.
Yeah, because it's counterintuitive. It's like, well, if the ad's working, shouldn't we be spending less?
Right? Yes, right. That messes me up all the time. So.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing it. I'm sure there's, several podcasts just in that process. And I'm sure we could go a lot deeper in a future episode, which hopefully we could, just like a deep dive on
anytime.
The advertising process.
One little silver lining with having other people operate these companies, by the way, is it really frees up my day, right? So like, I don't work in the business day to day. I'm not in their Slack. I barely have an email address. Like, I don't mess with the people that work there. And that's the ego. That ego check is difficult too. Like at this trade show, I tried to just shut my mouth and do my thing and sell socks because I'm pretty good at that. But they all have like their regular work to do. So they're working at the booth and I'm trying to stay focused on the booth. But, an average week for Brian is pretty mellow. I do some Airbnb stuff, do a little bit of sock stuff, reach out to media. I don't do anything for Fix It Sticks. I'm happy to, but he's never asked. So
Dylan, I think we've found a regular contributor to the pod.
100%. I hope you will come back.
Anytime.
Maybe a closing question before we get to BPC. You strike me as a guy who's constantly got different ideas ricocheting through your head. You don't have to necessarily out what different things you're thinking about for potential future projects, but I think that might be a fun way to close.
That's an interesting question because in when I was younger doing fix it sticks, like any idea was pretty much a good idea. And now that I know there's a lot of like how to say this, like there's a lot of pain that goes with launching these things too. Like it's really difficult, the mouth clenching thing, like it's no joke. Like the PTSD from launching things is real. That's what I tell people. That's what I say. So like when they ask me like, what are you working on now? I'm like, absolutely nothing. Because most of the ideas now don't filter past my brain, right? Like I'll have an idea for something. Like last night I had one with my daughter. I don't even know what it was, but it's just like almost every day I have some sort of idea. Most of them are 99% of them are completely stupid. But every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I'll play with one. But in the beginning, I would play with all those ideas far enough to make it very clear that's not a good idea. Now I run it through those business model tests a little bit more in my head. Like, is this a small problem for a small amount of people or a big problem? I'll kind of go through that process. And then more importantly, lately, I'll think about like, is there recurring opportunity with that same customer? So if selling a pair of Fix-It Sticks to somebody is really cool, but chances are we're going to sell them one pair of Fix-It Sticks and that's going to last them 5-10 years until they come back and maybe accessorize it, which we do see plenty of. Socks are a little much better because people wear out socks, which is great. Or they want more, they buy them for gifts. So there's a lot more potential with that same customer on socks. But like my co-founder's, he has a subscription business that's like a pill and unicorn dust and hooves of water buffalo or whatever he puts in this magic formula that does stuff for you. Like it's a subscription business, so every month he grows, that follow-on subscription is just going and going and going. So like when I come to him with new ideas, I'm like, what about this? He's like, is it a subscription? I'm like, no. He's like, I'm out. So he's done the same thing. Like he's gotten pretty narrow on what he wants to do. And subscriptions are hard to launch. He'll call it cracking the code. Like it took that other brand that he does, it took him like 3 weeks to crack the code. And when I say that, it doesn't sound so bad, right? But every day he's spending, the process he does is like, he'll spend $500 one day, $1,000 the next day, $1,500 next day, $3,000 next day. And he's just trying to get the algorithm at Facebook to kind of like catch. But that could get up to like $10, $15, $20,000 in a day and it might not catch. So that, like, you just got to put yourself in that mindset of not knowing where you're going. But 3 weeks into this testing process, you're feeling pretty broke and defeated. But then it broke through for him. And same with Hollow. It broke through in the hunting and all that stuff. It's a similar process there. You kind of break through with the algorithm, gear up your spend, and that communicates to Facebook that you're serious. Or, this is my own head imagining this. I don't know if this is true, but like if I was the algorithm at Facebook, how much you're spending and how quickly you're growing would certainly factor into how much I want to show you're at.
All right. So subscription is maybe the next business from Brian.
Yeah.
Davis.
So if you're out there thinking and you got a subscription business that people would stick with for 6 months or more, go do it. If you're doing a sock business, please stop.
All right. Our closing segment here, brand, product, content, an acronym that you recently learned in the Second Nature Slack. Brian Davis, did you bring something to share with the audience?
I did. I didn't bring it with me because it's giant, but I was preparing for this question and like, what is the thing that has brought me the most joy in the last year of something I purchased? I was kind of sticking with that. And for me, I splurged and got the Wahoo bike in my basement. I don't even remember what it's called, but like the one with the controls and it goes up and down, like it's just purpose built to be in the basement, whatever one that one is. And it was a lot of money to spend on an indoor only bike, but I have a lot of bikes out there that I spent way more on. I get it, right? But this one was like, if I'm going to spend, living in Wisconsin, if you're going to spend 8 to 10 hours a week in the winter in the basement, suffering away on Zwift or whatever you're doing, like at least get the right equipment. And that thing has made me happier than I could have ever imagined. It runs like a champ. It's quiet as can be. It's got all the controls in it. It functions perfectly. I was very nervous to buy it because they've had some customer service issues or breakage issues. I've had absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I use the bejesus out of that thing.
Rad. I've heard their new treadmill is also world class, like the best thing going right now.
That would be cool too. Yeah. So, I'm all in on that equipment.
Yeah.
That bike is definitely on my wish list at some point.
So good.
It looks like
good.
Looks like a roller coaster.
It is so good. I barely even use that part, but because I'm mostly doing set workouts, and it doesn't do that on a set workout, but when I go race and like the immersiveness of it is great, and having the controls and just Oh, it's so good.
Lutz, you want to go next?
Okay, I decided to bring a bike tool to the chat today because I've felt like it was in line with some of the fix it stick stuffs. I have just recently come into the future. This little box right here, this is a Fantic. Okay, first of all, because I have a YouTube channel about bikes, I get hit up by every brand on the planet that makes one of these things, and I finally found one that actually works and works really well. It's called Fantic. And you basically, there's a little digital reader here. You type in what your PSI is that you want on your tires, and then you just go, and it automatically fills it up. There's no CO2 cartridge. It's just all electric. This thing is amazing, and it's smaller than the bike pump I used to carry in my backpack. It's smaller than a CO2 cartridge. The future is actually here. I've been ignoring these for so long because I get like 10 emails a week about like our electric bike pump. I finally saw this one and was like, I think this is the one. And yeah, wow.
That's so I bought one of those. That would have made my list if I would have thought about it too, of things that made me the most happy, because I had all kinds of tubeless struggles this year, and having that little pump. The one I bought was a cheapie though. It didn't have the LED display, and that's a huge mistake. So if you're going to go buy one, the Fantic with the display that's what you want. Yeah. Otherwise you're just guessing and feeling the
Is Fantic a Chinese company?
I think they might be. They make a bunch of tools and stuff too. I have like their torque wrench. I have a couple other things from them, but this, just like the idea of the electronic pump, I mean, that's this small as well, is so crazy, because my backpack's been loaded down with so many other implements to keep my tires full if anything goes wrong on a mountain bike ride. The fact that I mean,
talk about solving a very important problem for like a decent sized number of people, right?
Yeah.
That's the type of product that like probably every cyclist would be in the market for, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just a mountain bike thing. It's like you could put this up to road tire pressure as well. It's not just like for one style of rider. It's like every single cyclist on the planet can use this one singular product.
What a great takeaway from the episode.
I'll give you one tip with those though.
Yeah.
Put it in your calendar once a month to charge that thing. It's a free accessory to go with it, but you're going to want that. Yeah. I learned that the hard way.
Good advice. Well, what a great lesson to take away from this episode for myself personally, and for a lot of our listeners, is just to use that lens of like, what type of problem are you solving for how many people? And that's a good way to evaluate whether you're really onto a real business or something that might cause more stress than return
well said.
Value. So anyway, my contribution here today, I didn't bring anything, so I'll just add the podcast I listened to while I was running this morning. Do you guys listen to the Founders podcast with David Senra?
Yeah.
Oh.
Good show. Brian, you would love it. You would love it. Effectively what it is the host, he reads a book like a biography or an autobiography or something that's about a founder. And he uses kind of a broad interpretation. So, for example, he just did a couple of episodes on Rick Rubin. He's done them on Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So, like high achieving people, but mostly just entrepreneurs. And this episode, so he reads a book and then just kind of does a podcast episode about what the book is about and his key learnings from it. And the one from today was on Kevin Kelly's essay about how to live an excellent life. I think it's Excellent Advice for Living was the title of the essay. And it's a very good, just, 37-minute listen with, just like a bullet point list of great takeaways for founders and entrepreneurs. The one thing that I really enjoyed that I've been thinking about a lot personally is the world has an abundance of critics and not enough evangelists. And I think that's one of the things we try and do here on the show, is to celebrate those who are in the arena and not be critics of what they're doing, right? Even when there's things that, maybe do deserve criticism, is to take a charitable view and talk about things honestly with the deep understanding of the fundamental truth that business is hard. And I don't know, it really resonated with me as like, just a lot of stuff that we've been dealing with at Free Trail. It's like, it's better to be an evangelist than a critic, and trying to mirror that in my actions is a clarifying thing that was in my brain this morning.
I couldn't agree with that concept more. And like, you know, a good example, you jumping on that website and buying 6 pairs of socks. Like, so I was on a little panel with other entrepreneurs. I bought a product from every single one of them last week and thrilled. Like, it's just cool to support people. I was in all their shoes. I was working out of my garage, right? Like anything I can do to kind of give back to that is super meaningful to me. And then how many times, this is to add to your point, like how many times I got should on in the beginning is remarkable. Like, oh, you should make this to do this. Oh, you should make socks that do this. You should make tools that do this. I'm like, mother cracker, I pay attention to nothing in my life other than tools and socks depending on the time of life, right? And like, and you know about me for 15 seconds and you have all the answers. Like, maybe park your ego for a second and think, how could I help this person instead of advising this person? Anyway, I applaud that podcast is now on my list, so I appreciate you sharing that.
I love this phrase of being should on. I love that.
It's the worst. You can always tell when someone has never actually been an entrepreneur when they open a sentence with "you should." I'm like, instantly, I'm like, oh, I know you've never done anything then.
Yes.
Because anyone who's lived the life they don't open with that. Like I usually say, I'm sure you've considered. Walk me through why you decided not to. Right? They've thought about it. I'm sure of it.
Brian, you're an absolute legend, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope you'll come back.
Anytime.